Tonight on To The Point.
It is with great regret that I inform you that the planning for the Elk Grove Sacramento Zoo is ending.
Why Elk Grove and the Sacramento Zoo are calling it quits, and what happens next. Plus, lawmakers right now debating big changes to rooftop solar, how it could impact people's energy bills, the new outlook on the U.S. economy, the growing fears that tariffs might be playing a role, and marking 50 years since the end of the Vietnam War. Tonight, the local son apologizing for his father, U.S. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara.
I believe he knew at that time, in November of 1965, that the U.S. could not win this war.
And what he's done since the war.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us on To The Point. I'm Alex Bell. Tonight, the Elk Grove Sacramento Zoo project is no more. It was supposed to be a bold new chapter for the Sacramento Zoo, but now the vision for the new state-of-the-art facility in Elk Grove has officially been shelved. The Sacramento Zoological Society says financial hurdles have halted the project, leaving the future of the zoo in question once again. ABC 10's Garshpal Sangha joins us live from the Sacramento Zoo with what went wrong and what happens next.
Yeah, Alex, what happens next for the Sacramento Zoo is to go back to the drawing table to see what they can do with the current land park location. And this is a location that is not getting any younger. We're approaching almost 100 years since it first opened, but trying to get the zoo to Elk Grove, it's been talked about for years, but as you mentioned, those plans are no more. And zoological officials say they couldn't deliver on a promise without cutting corners. So that is why the decision that was made. And so that decision was made by the Zoological Society online this morning, confirming that the long-planned Elk Grove Zoo project is canceled. Now, the vision was supposed to be a 65-acre cutting-edge zoo with space to grow. But officials say as designs took shape, the dream shrank dramatically. And that reduced version was just 30 species, which is less than a third of what the land park location currently hosts.
We've made an effort to bring a big project forward in partnership with Elk Grove. Elk Grove was there along the way. And, you know, we all have to live within our financial means. And so that's true of us individually as well as for a big project like this.
And as many people know by now, just that first phase alone was going to cost a little more than $300 million. Now, the city of Elk Grove, who purchased the land for the project, says it respects the zoo's decision and will now decide what to do with that property. Now, zoo officials say donors to the zoo project will be contacted directly about the return or redirection of their contribution. So officials tell us still at the land park location, they still get about 500,000 visitors every year. So it is a zoo that is continue to be visited, but officials haven't said when they're expecting to make a decision on what to do with the current location. Reporting live from the Sacramento Zoo, Garshpal Sangha, ABC 10.
All right, Garshpal, thank you for the update. We appreciate it. Well, happening now at the state capitol, the debate over a bill that could cut back the credits rooftop solar users get for sending energy back to the grid. This is a live look at the committee meeting where the bill is being heard for the first time. Right now, Californians with rooftop solar panels on older net energy metering plans receive credits on their electric bills when their unused solar energy is sold to the grid. Now, AB 942 would change how long rooftop solar customers can keep deals for the power they send back. Those that have been on plans for 10 years or more would have to switch to newer, less generous plans, and new homeowners would not be allowed to inherit solar benefits when buying. The bill's author, Assemblymember Lisa Calderon, says the goal is to reduce the financial gap between solar and non-solar customers.
Solar subsidies are no longer fair and have led to a cost shift onto non-solar customers to ensure the grid is maintained. The cost shift amounted to $8.5 billion in last year alone, and it's expected to increase each year in future years.
Before running for the assembly, Calderon worked with SoCal Edison for 25 years as a government affairs manager. Critics argue this bill could derail California's efforts to combat climate change, reduce air pollution, and also ensure energy reliability. For the first time in 3 years, the U.S. has a negative economic output. The GDP is down 0.3%. This number reflects the first 3 months of the year. And here's Perry Russum with more on how President Trump is responding and also the impact it could have.
New government numbers out today show the U.S.'s economic output is slowing under President Trump. Gross domestic product for the first quarter of the year is down 0.3%.
And I have to start off by saying that's Biden. That's not Trump, because we came in on January, this are quarterly numbers.
It's the first time the U.S. is seeing negative growth since 2022. The numbers reflect the first 3 months of the year and the first 3 months of Trump's term.
This is Biden, and you could even say the next quarter is sort of Biden, because it doesn't just happen on a daily or an hourly basis.
The Bureau of Economic Analysis says the GDP decline reflects an increase in imports. The numbers calculated before Trump's tariffs went into effect. Companies stockpiling inventory, causing that spike in imports.
Businesses themselves have announced that, they are uncertain about how much they will be able to sell in the future.
Trump holding a cabinet meeting today after his 100th day in office. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer says tariff deals are still some weeks out.
So this is something, a reordering of global trade that hasn't happened since the end of World War II, and it's long overdue.
Trump talking tariffs with ABC's Terry Moran yesterday.
145% tariffs on China, and that is basically an embargo.
They deserve it.
It'll raise prices on everything from electronics to clothing to building houses.
You don't know that. You don't know whether or not China's going to eat it.
That's mathematics.
China probably will eat those tariffs.
Trump today.
Maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30, and maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally.
The executive director of the Port of Los Angeles tells CNBC their shipping volume will be down 35% next week. He says major American retailers are stopping their shipments from China as the country faces that tariff of 145%. Perry Russom, ABC News, Washington.
And today I spoke with two political analysts, Roger Salazar and Rob Stutzman, to talk more about Trump's 100 days in office and also the political impacts of tariffs. Take a listen.
Presidents will use tariffs. Reagan used them. Clinton used them. Obama. So tariffs are a tool in the toolkit. But this is a massive imposition of tariffs, unlike anything we've seen in a century. And the base will go with him because it's his plan. But it's not as if a bunch of people wearing red hats at rallies really understand and feel passionately about tariffs.
Yeah, agreed.
How do you think Trump's tariff proposals will play with different voting blocs like blue-collar workers and suburban voters? Do you think it's kind of going back to when they see it and they feel it, they know it's there and it's going to be an issue?
Well, if they're going to, as long as they possibly can, and you heard it even yesterday, when you talk about the problems with the economy, they're going to continue as long as they can to try and blame it on the previous guy, right? That's Joe Biden's economy. It's not us. Well, again, starting with April with this tariff plan, the impacts that has had on the economy, that's all him. And as you continue to sort of feel the effects of that, voters are going to turn on him. I believe that.
UPS laid off 20,000 or announced laying off 20,000 employees yesterday. That's not on Biden. That's on the tariff Trump policies. It's going to be hard for him to hide from that.
We also spoke about DOGE cuts, immigration, and the impacts to California. You can watch To the Point special on 100 days of the Trump presidency and its impact on California right now on the ABC 10 Plus TV streaming app. Just look for California and Trump's first 100 days on the home screen. Next on To the Point, lawmakers pushing back on boat quarantine rules at Folsom Lake, what they want to happen.
It was one of the warmest days of the year so far, almost 90 in downtown. A little cooler tomorrow, but still tracking a bigger cool down for the weekend.
Plus, reflecting on the end of the Vietnam War, how one local man is trying to make amends for his father's actions. Tonight, local lawmakers are asking state and federal authorities to rethink boating rules at Lake Folsom. Golden mussels were discovered in the port of Stockton in October of 2024. A 30-day quarantine was set up in nearby waterways to stop the spread. But now lawmakers worry about the impact this will have on boaters and businesses that rely on the recreation industry.
They may actually have to consider going out of business and moving into doing something else because they absolutely cannot do without a recreation season in Folsom Lake.
Assemblymember Josh Hoover says hot water decontamination could be a faster solution. Lake Tahoe and other lakes in the area use decontamination stations already. California State Park says it's working on Folsom Lake too. All right, let's jump into your weather now. We have some changes coming. Meteorologist Brendan Minchef joining us tonight. And I understand you're tracking some rain chances?
Yeah, nothing like what we saw with the previous system that came in, but definitely as we get towards the weekend, some scattered shower chances are back on the table. We made it to 89 today, downtown Sacramento, 87 in Stockton, 85 down in Modesto, 84 Tracy, 86 in Fairfield, 88 in Vacaville, 86 in Marysville, 77 Jackson, 77 in Auburn. Temperatures way above normal for the time of year, plus 12 today in Sacramento. And that 89 degrees actually ties us with April 14th. As the warmest day of the year so far. Still haven't quite hit 90 degrees. Our average first 90-degree day is just around the corner, but 90s are not immediately in the 10-day forecast. We've also had some showers and thunderstorms across the high country today. At this point, it's mostly just some showers, some more heavy than others, but no thunder or lightning out there at the moment until you work your way down south of Yosemite. So that's what we're tracking for the next couple of hours before activity winds down by the time we get towards about 8 or 9 o'clock tonight. 86 in Sacramento, currently 84 in Stockton, 84 Modesto, 70 Placerville, and about 60 up in the Sierra. As we go through the rest of this evening, in the 70s by 9 o'clock, 60s by 11 o'clock. Tonight it should be clear and it'll be mild overnight as well. The average low 51. I've got much of the valley in those low to mid 50s. And again, no real weather concerns. Overnight should be, in fact, a clear night. Thursday afternoon, we're going to top out in the 80s again, but likely a few degrees cooler than where we were today. I've got 84 tomorrow in Sacramento, 85 Stockton, 85 in Modesto, 79 Angels Camp, 79 in Jackson, 79 in Auburn as well, mid-60s in the Sierra. As we look at the weather pattern, this low pressure starting to move away, so we're still going to keep some shower and thunderstorm chances at the Sierra crest for the next couple of days before another system starts to drop in by the time we get to Saturday. It's going to bring us cooler temperatures, a scattered shower chance, maybe a dusting of snow at the high passes. Then it moves out and high pressure builds back in next week, so temperatures are going to dip as we head into the weekend. Again, a dusting of snow possible at the high country Saturday night into Sunday morning, and we see cooler temperatures near 70 on Saturday, and then we're right back in the 80s next week, Alex.
Next, on to the point marking 50 years since the end of the Vietnam War. Tonight, the local man apologizing for his father's actions, how he's trying to make amends. Today marks 50 years since the fall of Saigon that ended the decades-long Vietnam War. For many Vietnamese Americans, today marks a day of sorrow as they remember losing their home. And for one man in Winters, today is a day where he remembers the actions of his father and the impacts it had on the people of Vietnam and here in the States. ABC 10's Jeannie Nguyen shares the story of Craig McNamara, the son of Robert McNamara, who served as the Secretary of Defense during the Vietnam War. Craig says that he will forever be trying to make up to the people of Vietnam and the U.S. for the actions of his father.
So here's President Johnson and Lady Bird Johnson, my mother and father, myself, and my sisters Margie and Kathleen.
These photos on Craig McNamara's desk show brief moments in United States history. The late presidents, John F. Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson, and the former U.S. Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara, Craig's father. He was only 10 years old when his father was selected for the cabinet position.
My father was picked up every day in a limousine that would take him to the Pentagon.
Craig remembers being supportive of his dad's role in the White House, but as he grew older, his beliefs started to change.
I began understanding that the war was wrong.
Of the dozens of trips his father took to Vietnam to survey damages from the war, Craig believes his father was not honest about what he saw and relied on optimism.
Leaving us an optimistic impression that our soldiers were winning, that our body counts were demonstrating that the National Liberation Front, the North Vietnamese, were dying at a much higher rate than ARVN and U.S. troops. And those of us who began to resist the war recognized that those were not truths.
Video from August 1964 shows Robert McNamara emphasizing the U.S. did not want to be heavily involved in the war.
We wish to emphasize we seek no wider war. Our response will depend upon the action of the aggressors, in this case the North Vietnamese. The key to the situation remains the cessation of infiltration from the north into the south.
I believe he knew at that time, in November of 1965, that the U.S. could not win this war.
Making Craig wonder why his father would continue the U.S.'s involvement in the war. The U.S. left Vietnam in March 1973. The fall of Saigon happened on April 30th, 1975.
There's a quote that my father has said that his loyalty was to the president. And I questioned my father. If he were here today, I would question him, why were you more loyal to your president than to the Constitution?
It's a question that's haunted Craig a majority of his life. In the 90s, decades after the war, Robert McNamara famously said he was wrong about his role in the Vietnam War. He wrote about his regrets in a memoir. As 2025 marks 50 years since the fall of Saigon, Craig was asked to be a part of a documentary with Vietnamese media professionals with one goal in mind.
I missed so many opportunities with my father to learn, to listen, and to help him change, and to help him apologize for his role in the Vietnam War. This amazing man, who's 47 years old, he's a survivor of Agent Orange. Our nation applied 13 million gallons of Agent Orange across Vietnam. We forever changed the environment.
Craig is now a farmer and owns this property in Winters, growing walnuts and almonds. As a young adult, Craig says he moved to California to protest the United States' involvement in the Vietnam War. After a 2.5-year eye-opening trip through Central America, Craig says he realized he wanted to become a farmer.
I recognized the importance of food production, how important it is to all of our survival, and it is the crux of war. We produce enough food in this world to feed every child, every human being.
Sierra Orchards has been in Craig's family since 1980, in a never-ending journey to find a path forward with respect for the land and each other. In Winters, Jeannie Nguyen, ABC 10.
Craig McNamara also wrote a memoir on his perspective of his father's involvement in the war, titled Because Our Fathers Lied. Details on the book and also his farm, Sierra Orchards, can be found on our website, abc10.com. And the Vietnam War spanned more than 19 years, claiming the lives of over 3 million people. It became one of the longest, most costly, and controversial conflicts in U.S. history. But it's what came after the war that would go on to reshape an entire generation. Tomorrow, we introduce you to Jackie Wynn, who was just 3 when her family fled with nothing but hope and each other in a desperate pursuit of freedom.
The risks were enormous because had we not been successful in leaving, we probably would have been captured and put in re-education camps and not have the life that we have here. Maybe not even be alive.
Tomorrow on To The Point, we share how Jackie and her family fled right before the fall of Saigon, becoming part of the first wave of Vietnam refugees who resettled in the U.S., where they would go on to give back to the California community that gave her and her family a second chance. Next on To The Point, the summer travel season is picking up, the deadline that you need to know about. All right, before we go, the enforcement period for a real ID is just days away. Starting on May 7th, you will not be able to fly domestically or access certain federal facilities without the ID. The identification has a star or a flag that says enhanced somewhere on it, on its face to indicate it is a real ID status, and you can start the process to get the ID on the California DMV website. You will need several documents, including proof of citizenship and residency. After you finish that application, though, you will need to visit a field office to finish the process. If you want more details, we do have them on our website. As always, thank you so much for watching and inviting us into your home. If you have something that you think we should be looking into, please, please, please reach out to me and the team. You can always email us at tothepoint@abc10.com. Remember, strangers are just people we haven't gotten the chance to meet yet, so take the time to get to know someone. And if you're looking for any of our content, including our new streaming special on Trump's first 100 days, don't forget, To The Point content does not end here. You can always watch stories and specials featured on our show. Just download our free ABC 10 Plus streaming app straight to your TV. Have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.